All right, welcome to Talkin Investing. I'm Tom, and as always, this is not financial advice. Today, I want to talk about Marathon Digital Holding, stock ticker MARA. They are a Bitcoin mining company. They put out their January operational report. The amount of Bitcoin they mined in January was a pretty dramatic drop-off from what happened in December, so I want to go through that operational report. I want to talk about all the reasons why this happened. I want to talk about whether or not I think we should be concerned, and also what I think is going to happen next for Marathon. In addition to that, we're going to take a look at their price, their market cap, and their chart. So we have a lot to go through. We're making a run for 20,000 subscribers. So if you are new to the channel, if you enjoy Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners, if that's content that you're interested in, we really would appreciate if you would consider subscribing to the channel. Also, if everybody could please smash the like button. We're going for 700 likes on this video. I want to thank everybody for all the likes I've been getting lately. It's been helping out the videos a lot, and it's been helping out the channel a lot. Let's talk about Marathon Digital Holdings. So as of the close of business Monday, Marathon was trading at $16.64. They were down about 8.5% on the day. I will say, I'm not sure how much of that was the operational report. It was a very red day for all of the Bitcoin miners, so I think it was some combination of those things. Another couple of things quickly worth noting, at $16.64, their 52-week high is over $31, and that was just less than 6 weeks ago. So this stock is very nearly cut in half in the last 6 weeks. This is also not unique to Marathon. All the Bitcoin miners have had a pretty rough run over the last 5.5 or 6 weeks. Marathon is no exception to that. Marathon is the largest Bitcoin miner by market cap. They are also the largest by production. Even after this giant decrease in production in the month of January, they will still be the largest Bitcoin miner by production in the month of January. We're going to take a look at that in a minute. You're going to see this puts them down to somewhere around a $3.7 billion market cap. I just want to take a very brief look at where they've been in the past. Okay, this is their market cap over the last 3 years. So one of the things I want to show you is on November 8th, 2021, that was basically the day Bitcoin hit its all-time high. Marathon was about a $7.5 billion company. It's worth noting, in the month of November 2021, Marathon mined under 200 Bitcoin. So last month they mined 1,800 Bitcoin. This month they mined over 1,000. So you can see they are a dramatically bigger company. Their operational exahash is about 10 times what it was at this time. They're mining between 5 and 10 times the amount of Bitcoin, yet their market cap is in half. Bitcoin is off of its all-time highs, but I did want to put things in perspective. Whether you look at the stock price or the market cap, Marathon is down significantly from their high from the previous cycle. Okay, let's take a look at the operational report. Marathon Digital Holdings announces Bitcoin production and mining operations updates for January 2024. This was February 5th. Okay, a couple of things right off the bat. They increased their energized hash rate by 7% to 26.4 exahash. That is the most out of any publicly traded Bitcoin mining company. They increased their Bitcoin hodl to 15,741. That is the most out of any publicly traded Bitcoin mining company. And they still have over $1 billion in liquidity. That's an update from the previous month where they announced that they had $1 billion in liquidity. So they maintain that level of liquidity. So there are a lot of good things going on with Marathon. However, what I want to talk about right now is the amount of Bitcoin they produced in January versus the amount of Bitcoin they produced in December, because it was a dramatic drop-off. So far, out of all the Bitcoin miners that have reported, this was by far the most significant drop-off. So I want to talk about the exact reasons why that happened and whether or not we should be worried about any of these. So first, let's get to the production. You're going to see in January, they mined 1,084 Bitcoin. So you'll see right here in this chart in figure 1, in December, they mined 1,853 Bitcoin. So that is down 42% month over month. The other thing I wanted to show you is they report the number of blocks that they won. In other words, this is the number of blocks that they solved, so they get the reward for those blocks. This month it was 140. Last month it was 222. So that was a 37% decrease. So you can see it's not just the amount of Bitcoin that they mined, but it was also the amount of blocks that they solved were also down in a similar fashion. So before I read this report, I'm going to give you a little summary of exactly what's going on here, and then we're going to dig into it. This is a chart of the top 11 Bitcoin miners by production in the month of December. So you'll see Marathon was in first, and they were in first by a mile. 1,853. Core Scientific was in second with 1,177. So that is a distant second. Now, before we get to Marathon's results, you're going to see of the companies that have reported, and the companies that have reported are shaded in gray. Not all of the companies have put out their January operational report. I expect the rest of them over the next few days, and I expect them to be very similar to what we're seeing here. you're going to see there's a theme. Most of these companies had a big drop off from December to January. There were a few reasons that were in common with all these Bitcoin miners. Now, in Marathon's case, there were some reasons that were Marathon specific. So you're going to see at the top of the list, that was 42% reduction. That is by far the worst on this page. So should we be worried? Okay, I made a little list of what's going on here in my opinion, and then we're going to get to the operational report, and it's going to address each one of these items. There is one that I want to talk about in specific that they don't really talk about. Okay, so Marathon January 2024 result highlights. The first thing is they increased their energized hash rate by 7%. So common sense would dictate that they should have mined more Bitcoin. Now, I will tell you, like we just saw, almost all the Bitcoin miners had a pretty dramatic pullback for the following reasons, a lot of which were in common. There was a substantial decrease in the amount of fees that were charged on each block in the month of January versus the month of December. So all the Bitcoin miners had really extraordinary months in December. Most of them had their best month of the year. We talked about this at the time. I will tell you, I put out this video last month, and specifically in this video, I talked about the fact that this 1,853 Bitcoin that Marathon mined was an outlying event. I expected that they would not be able to do this again the rest of the year. In addition to that, I will say the 1,853 Bitcoin that Marathon mined in December of 2023, that is going to be the record. That is going to be more than any Bitcoin miner mines in any month for the entire year of 2024 in all likelihood. So obviously, there are no guarantees of that. We could get another surprise, but I think it's highly likely no one's going to match that number for the entire year 2024, including Marathon. So this is consistent with what we talked about in last month's video. Okay, the next reason is there was an increase in curtailment pretty much across the board. So even though Marathon does most of their Bitcoin mining in Texas, all the Texas Bitcoin miners are reporting that they had to curtail in the month of January. So Texas is a situation where in the summer months they have extreme heat, but in the winter months they do have cold weather. The Bitcoin miners in Texas, even in the winter months, are asked to curtail their activities, and so therefore that reduces the amount of uptime they have and it reduces the amount of Bitcoin that they mine. So that was pretty common among all of the Bitcoin miners in the month of January. This was pretty much across the board. Okay, the next one is specific to Marathon: equipment failures and site outages. So we will talk more about that when we get to the monthly operational report. This is the one that I actually do have a little bit of a concern with. The first two are pretty much business as usual, but the equipment failures and site outages, that is specific to Marathon. And then the final one, I'm calling luck. And again, we talked about this a lot in last month's videos, whether you want to call it the law of averages, a reversion or a regression to the mean. December was a statistical outlier. Everything went right. And so the most likely result by far here in the month of January was some more normalized number. We're going to take a look at a chart. In fact, I want to go there right now and show you what I'm talking about. Okay, this is a list of Bitcoin mined by month for Marathon, really over the last 13 months, last January 23 over this January 2024. So you're going to see last month was 1,853. If you go to the months before that, they were somewhere in the neighborhood of 11 or 1,200. So this month here was really the statistical anomaly. We talked about some of the reasons why that was, and one of them in Bitcoin mining is luck. They mined a lot of blocks. The way that Bitcoin mining works, this can happen in any given month. Now, the larger you are to scale, the more luck evens out, but Marathon did have a very lucky month in the month of December. So that's why I say it was a little bit of the perfect storm, and you can see on this chart just how much of an outlier it was. So it was fairly easy to predict that they were going to come back down to earth in January. Now, they did get a little bit lower in my estimation than they should have. So while this is not a great number, it does make a lot more sense if you just skip back 1 month and compare it to November. This is 1,084 Bitcoin mined versus 1,187. So, that's about 100 Bitcoin different than the month of November. So in that regard, this month shouldn't really be that shocking. Okay, this is back to the operational report. I just want to talk about management's commentary a little bit. So this is from Fred Thiel, the CEO of Bitcoin. In January, we increased our energized hash rate by 7% to 26.4 exahash. So we want to look at both the good and the bad and give this report a fair shake. So, it is good news that they continue to increase their exahash. 26.4 is by far the most out of any publicly traded Bitcoin miner. So he goes on to say, as our team worked to address several temporary disruptions that negatively impacted our production. That's from Fred Thiel, Marathon's chairman and CEO. Quote, these disruptions included weather-related curtailment, so we talked about that. This is something they can expect over the next several months, most likely. But then they go on to say, and equipment failures that led to site outages and reduced our average operational hash rate 14% to 19.3 exahash in the month of January. So this is something I'd like to know a little bit more about. Of all the things that happened in the month of January, this would be the one that concerns me. Equipment failures that led to outages. So that's a pretty generic statement. I would love to know a little bit more about exactly what happened. How did this much of their exahash come offline for a period of time? The things that they talk about really don't account for a full 42% decrease. If you take a look, they talk about a 14% decrease in their exahash rate. They talk about a 14% decrease in their month-over-month transaction fees. So those two things alone don't translate to a 42% decrease. If you add to that the last piece that we talked about, which is basically the luck that they had in December, this becomes a more normal month. Of all those factors, the one that was inside of their control were these equipment failures and site outages. So I've highlighted another sentence. It says, our team is addressing the short-term disruptions and working to bring our sites back to full strength. We expect hash rate to improve over the next few weeks. So what that tells me is through February 5th, they are still experiencing difficulties, and they're talking about the next few weeks to get back up and running. So as January was a tough month for them, I now expect to have some similar numbers in the month of February as well. One of the unfortunate things about this, even if they do get all of this straightened away and fixed away in a couple of weeks, as they say that they will, all of these months prior to the halving, and there are very few left, February and March are really the last 2 full months prior to the halving. These were big opportunities to maximize the amount of Bitcoin that they mined, maximize their amount of revenue, and maximize the amount of Bitcoin that they hodled on their balance sheet. You can see Marathon does have the most Bitcoin on their balance sheet of any Bitcoin miner, but with these machines down, they are missing some opportunity. These are last-minute opportunities here because obviously the reward gets cut in half in just a few months. So I do think it's unfortunate timing, and I would like to hear more about exactly what it is that caused equipment failures and site outages. And then, of course, I'm hoping they put a press release out at some point this month to let us know if and when they are back up and running at full capacity. Okay, the last thing I want to take away from their operational report was this final sentence here again from management. With the acquisition closed and 7 exahash of miners on order and almost entirely paid, we have a clear path to grow our hash rate another 30% this year, so that will take them from about 26.4 exahash to maybe somewhere in the 34 or 35 exahash range by the end of the year. So they're saying they already have these machines basically bought and paid for. So it would seem like they have a pretty high level of confidence that they're targeting 34 or 35 exahash in 2024. And then they go on to say, and reach 50 exahash by the end of 2025. So these are very serious growth plans. After 2022 struggling to reach their targets, 2023, they did get everything up and running, and they now seem to be turning into a company that is hitting their targets. They are doing what they say they're going to do. These are some pretty serious price targets. With all of this in mind, even with the fact that there was a pretty dramatic pullback in their production in the month of January, it looks to me like they are set up to basically mine the most Bitcoin once again, probably all 12 months of the year in 2024. Now, obviously, anything can happen in any given month. We just saw some equipment failures and operational outages in the month of January, so anything can happen. But even with all of that, they still ended up mining more than all the other Bitcoin miners. So I would expect Marathon to lead the way from a production standpoint in the year 2024. I would also expect them to lead the way from an exahash standpoint. Let's just take one quick look at that. Okay, this is December 31st. This is the amount of exahash that each company had online, up and running, energized as of December 31st. You're going to see Marathon was by far in first place at 24.7 exahash. Core Scientific, which was in Chapter 11 at that point, they are now out of Chapter 11, and they seem to be growing. They were at 16.9 exahash. They were the closest, but pretty distantly behind. Riot was at 12.4 exahash. They really don't have any plans to get beyond that all the way through the halving. Now, they do have big plans by the end of the year. This is another company that's targeting getting to 30 and then 50 exahash. CleanSpark is in a similar situation. They're targeting getting to 20 exahash in short order and then to 30 or 35 exahash beyond that. There are a lot of other Bitcoin miners on this list that do have big growth plans, but really the ones I just talked about are the ones that have the largest growth plans. Probably the other one worth mentioning, Iris Energy has come out and put a growth plan together to get to 20 exahash and then potentially beyond. They do have a very big facility in Texas, but they're pretty far behind. So even with all the ones that I just mentioned, I do think it's going to be a race for second place as far as the number of operational exahash up and running and the number of Bitcoin mined per month, unless Marathon stumbles and makes a mistake. So they do have a very strong lead right now. I anticipate they will hold that lead, but obviously only time will tell, right? We're only through 1 month of the year. We've got 11 months left this year. We did have some surprises last year. And like I said, there are a bunch of other companies with very big growth plans this year. So time will tell. We're going to have to wait and see. Lastly, if we just look at their financial highlights, again, this is from their operational report for the month of January. You're going to see they had $318 million in cash. They had 15,741 Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So up at the top, they talked about the fact that that roughly translates to about $1 billion in liquidity. That's fairly similar to the month of December. There was a little redistribution. They had a little bit more cash in December. They did hodl over 550 Bitcoin in January, so they continue to add to this balance. I would expect that Marathon could take a legitimate run at getting 20,000 Bitcoin on their balance sheet by the end of the year 2024. Most of that will probably come in February and March and April. It will be a lot harder to add Bitcoin to their balance sheet after the halving. But with Marathon, with this massive amount of exahash, I do think they could continue to chip away and add a little bit of Bitcoin to their balance sheet each month for the rest of the year. So we'll see what happens. That's my personal target. Obviously, none of this is financial advice, and I don't know the future, so we're going to have to wait and see what happens. Lastly, if we take a quick look at their chart, you're going to see, like we talked about earlier, Marathon peaked on December 27th. That was their high for the year in 2023. Basically, every single Bitcoin miner hit their high for the year in 2023 on the same day here on December 27th. From that day, almost all the Bitcoin miners have had a pretty major pullback. In Marathon's instance, as of the end of the day Monday, they were down about 47% from their highs from December. So again, that was less than 6 weeks ago. You're going to see I do have what I consider a little bit of a line of support here at about $14.65. They did touch this line of support on January 19th a couple of weeks ago. If for whatever reason Marathon's price was continue to pull back, this would be about an 11.5% move to the downside. If we go all the way back to the beginning of October, which was about 4 months ago, this would actually be about a 56% pullback down to this line of support at about $7.20. I really don't think that's going to happen, but it's always important to remember the Bitcoin miners are extremely volatile. We talk about this in every single video. These companies go through gigantic swings, so this is by no means out of the question. While I'm not anticipating that, it certainly is on the table. Conversely, if they were to get back just to where they were 6 weeks ago, that would be an 88% move to the upside. So those are some short-term numbers to take a look at. My personal price targets for Marathon, this is a buy and hold for me. And again, this is not financial advice. You guys need to do your own due diligence. This stock is not necessarily right for every investor, but I am looking for this to potentially get back to its highs from the 2021 bull market and potentially even beyond over the next couple of years. A lot of things need to happen for Marathon to achieve that goal. Bitcoin has to have a strong couple of years. Marathon has to continue to perform over the next couple of years. Obviously, the network, the overall global hash rate is going to be an effect on that, and overall market sentiment. So there's certainly no guarantee for any of these things. And again, like I always talk about, these are extremely, extremely volatile stocks. So if for no other reason, if you don't enjoy volatility, if you don't have the stomach, if this is not the way that you invest, please be very careful before considering investing in Marathon or any of the Bitcoin miners. So that's what I have for you on Marathon for the month of January. And those are my thoughts on what may happen going forward. If you enjoy this video and you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.